Continuing Aldo Leopold's Sand County Almanac. Good oak. There are two spiritual dangers in not owning a farm. One is the danger of supposing that breakfast comes from the grocery, and the other is that heat comes from the furnace. To avoid the first danger, one should plant a garden, preferably where there is no grocer to confuse the issue. To avoid the second, he should lay a split of good oak on the andirons, preferably where there is no furnace, and let it warm his shins while a February blizzard tosses the trees outside. If one has cut, split, hauled, and piled his own good oak, and let his mind work the while, he will remember much about where the heat comes from, and with a wealth of details denied to those who spend the weekend in town astride a radiator. The particular oak now aglow on my andirons grew on the bank of an old emigrant road where it climbs the sandhill. The stump, which I measured upon felling the tree, has a diameter of 30 inches. It shows 80 growth rings, hence the seedling from which it originated must have laid its first ring of wood in 1865, at the end of the Civil War. But I know from the history of present seedlings that no oak grows above the reach of rabbits without a decade or more of getting girdled each winter, and re-sprouting during the following summer. Indeed, it is all too clear that ever surviving oak is a product either of rabbit negligence or of rabbit scarcity. Some day, some patient botanist will draw a frequency curve of oak birth years and show that the curve humps every 10 years, each hump originating from a low in the 10-year rabbit cycle. A fauna and flora, by this very process of perpetual battle within and among species, achieve collective immortality. It is likely, then, that a low in rabbits occurred in the middle 60s, when my oak began to lay on annual rings, but that the acorn that produced it fell during the preceding decade, when the covered wagons were still passing over my road into the great Northwest. It may have been the wash and wear of the emigrant traffic that bared this road bank and thus enabled this particular acorn to spread its first leaves in the sun. Only one acorn in 1,000 ever grow large enough to fight rabbits. The rest were drowned at birth in the prairie sea. It is a warming thought that this one wasn't, and thus lived to garner 80 years of June sun. It is this sunlight now that is now being released through the intervention of my axe and saw. To warm my shack and my spirit through the 80 gusts of blizzard. And with each gust, a wisp of smoke from my chimney bears witness to whomever it may concern that the sun did not shine in vain. My dog does not care where heat comes from, but he cares ardently that it comes and soon. Indeed, he considers my ability to make it come as something magical. For when I rise in the cold black pre-dawn and kneeling shivering by the hearth making a fire, he pushes himself blandly between me and the kindling splits I have laid in the ashes, and I must touch a match to them by poking it between his legs. Such faith, I suppose, is the kind that moves mountains. It was a bolt of lightning that put an end to the wood-making of this particular oak. We were all awakened one night in July by the thunderous crash. We realized that the bolt must have hit nearby, but since it had not hit us, We all went back to sleep. Man brings all things to the test of himself, and this is notably true of lightning. Look at that drawing. Next morning, as we strolled over the sandhill, rejoicing with the coneflowers and the prairie clover over their fresh accession of rain, we came upon a great slab of bark, freshly torn from the trunk of the roadside oak. The trunk showed a long spiral scar of barkless sapwood, a foot wide and not yet yellowed by the sun. By next day the leaves had wilted, and we knew that the lightning had bequeathed to us 3 cords of prospective fuel wood. We mourned the loss of the old tree, but knew that a dozen of its progeny stand straight and stalwart on the sands had already taken over its job of woodmaking. We let the dead veteran season for a year in the sun it could no longer use, and then on a crisp winter day we laid a newly filed saw to its bastion's base. Fragrant little chips of history spewed from the saw cut and accumulated on the snow before each kneeling sawyer. We sensed that these 2 piles of sawdust were something more than wood, that they were the integrated transect of a century, that our saw was biting its way, stroke by stroke, decade by decade, into the chronology of a lifetime, written in concentric annual rings of good oak.